We hear in the gospel message this morning, Jesus asked a question that my guess is many of us would love to have Jesus' attention just long enough to have him look right at us, to really see us, to be able to really hear what is on our hearts and in our minds. And Jesus looks at this blind man and says, "What do you want me to do for you?" What would that be like? To have Jesus look at you and really see you. And know that Jesus is wondering and really wanting to know and really care what you would like Jesus to know. What would you like Jesus to lift from your heart and your soul? This is the third part of these readings from Mark, where Jesus is trying to tell his disciples through miracles and teaching just how important it's going to be for us to carry on the gospel message. Just how important it is for us to let each other know and for us to be reminded with God, all things are possible, not necessarily what we want or not necessarily the way we want it, and certainly not in our time frame, perhaps. But that God's grace and love are never ending. And that the disciples were that first line of being able to pass this on, because the story will shift after that, and Jesus begins to head towards the cross. And he's told them that it's not going to be easy. So let's stay for a minute, because think about this beggar, this blind man. Think about the obstacles. You know, I mean, if you had maybe a bad day in the last month or so, and you just maybe have been trying really hard, maybe you've been, trying to read all the right stuff and say all the right things and do all the right stuff, and you still, Friday, I could have taken my computer and just as easily thrown it into a tree. And it would have been maybe satisfying for a second, right? Maybe you just felt like you're doing what you needed to do, and it's still you just couldn't lift it. You just couldn't move it. This blind man had so many more obstacles than we can even imagine. We imagine this man was sitting in a crowd, because at this point, right, Jesus was gaining quite a crowd. He was gaining quite a following. So we hear that there were a lot of people around. You can imagine, we hear others healing stories, like the hemorrhaging woman, for example. That one's one of my favorites. 12 years she had suffered. We don't know how old this man is, but we know for many years he had been suffering from being blind. He was poor. He was still going to any length. He was still going to any length to find God and to find healing, even in the midst of what for us might just seem absurdly tireless and long circumstances. Just kept showing up. And somehow his faith told him he had really come to believe that Jesus was Jesus of Nazareth. And this is the first time in the gospel that we hear someone say that. Jesus didn't just pick him out of a crowd and, he wasn't just being a lug under a tree. He took action. He came. He pursued Jesus, right? And Jesus, those around him, it's really funny all of a sudden when Jesus says, "Bring him here," right? Those same people say, "Oh, come," and just told him to shut up. No, you just stay back and you be quiet. You just get out of my way. I love it when Jesus says, "Oh, by the way, could you go bring them?" Some justice. Anyway, so they say, "Oh, please come." And he does. Jesus doesn't presume what he wants. Jesus doesn't presume what he needs, because he wants to hear from this man who has gone to all these lengths to find peace and healing and God. And that's at that moment when we hear the question. Actually, though I jump ahead of myself because what happens first is really important. When they say, come this way, he jumps up and throws his cloak away, throws his cloak back, and moves toward Jesus. Imagine for a minute what it's like, those of you that maybe do different things around our community with people that have struggled with means. Have you ever seen some of our friends in Dover that actually carry everything they have with them? They either have it on their back or they're pushing it in a cart. That is everything they have. And this cloak, we can imagine, was a very prized possession for this blind man. Imagine maybe a friend you see in Dover. Imagine this cloak kept them warm. This cloak had many jobs, right? This man was kept warm by it. Perhaps when he was sleeping, we could imagine maybe he would roll it up so maybe he could either put his head on it, or maybe depending on where he was, he could lay on it and have it be a place to sleep. The other thing people in that day used to do is they would lay the cloak out in front of them during the day and people could leave money. This cloak was important. What are we willing to let go of to really ask Jesus? Jesus of Nazareth, I really need a few seconds of your time. And what would we let go of, right? If all of a sudden, if in some cosmic way we could hear Jesus say, what do you need from me? What would we think? Well, gosh, I've got plans on Thursday. No. Oh, I'm not dressed right. We're good Episcopalians from the Northeast. I don't have the right clothes. What would we let go of? He just threw his cloak off and walked up to Jesus. This week, a parishioner from my last parish passed away. She was a woman that taught me so much. She's a young woman. She died of cancer. And when you meet her, the first thing you noticed was right under her eye, she had a tattoo of a teardrop. And on the outside, you look at her and you think, this is one tough woman. Some of you might imagine, if you know me, I might add something else. But in church vested, I will say, you would meet this woman and you wanted her to have your back. Let's just put it that way. This woman had been through things that I can't even imagine. And she believed in God the way, God doesn't live in a building. God didn't live in a person. It was just like she knew God. She had buried her son up on the top of a hiking trail years before I met her and scattered his ashes. And she had started coming to church and I'd gotten to know her. And she decided she wanted to be baptized. She's one of those that, and God forgive me if this is heretical to some people, she's one of those that had been coming to church for a while and receiving communion. And I believe that at that point, God was able to work through communion so that she then wanted to be baptized. The sacraments work in ways that we can't always ask or imagine. So she wanted to be baptized. And I just looked at her and I said, I asked her how she wanted to do it, and we had talked for a long time. And she said, well, I know what I want you'd never do. Well, don't tell me that. She said, I would really like to be baptized up at the lake where we left my son. So we planned it, and that's what we did, and friends were with us. couple things that was really powerful about it that I'll never forget is we didn't talk anything about the hike. We didn't, and so we all got out of our cars and we got ready to go, and we hiked up to this spot. I have no idea how long it took. Nobody talked. We didn't plan it to be meditation. We didn't plan it to be sacred space, but it was. We just walked. We walked up and we sat by the lake and she told stories. And I am a congregational wasp from Freiburg, Maine. We do not do full immersion baptism, and we sure as heck don't do it in lakes. But we did. We prayed, and then we walked into the lake. And down she went. Down she went. I haven't even seen this on TV. God had to have been doing this. And down she went. And when she came up, I can show you pictures. Kirsten will tell you. The light gives me goosebumps today. I don't know. All I know is that God was present. I know that she was a woman where we used to have a blanket ministry where if you brought your old blankets, we'd have them washed and cleaned. We'd put them in bags and give them out at the food pantry because people were cold. And I walked into the church one morning. I've got a picture of this. I love it. I walked into the church one morning and the entire back pew was full of brand new blankets. Of course, nobody. Who did it? Who did it? Who did it? Got home, I got on my computer. I'm like, so when did you leave them on? She's like, you be shutting up. She goes, I said, yeah, but I know you know what it's like to be cold. She didn't have much money. What lengths will we go? What lengths will we go to be able to feel the love and care of Jesus? Sometimes those places are found in dark places. She was a powerful example to me about being a person that followed the life and teachings of Jesus, and she was not always treated the way one would hope to be. She is now in the loving arms of God in whatever way that makes manifest in our imagination. And she will be, probably already has been at this point, cremated, and her ashes will be dispersed up in the lake. From ashes we come, and to ashes we shall return. We hear the message this morning from Jesus, what do you need from me? What I know from Wanda and what I know from you and what I know from the teachings of Jesus is that what I think if we can all find ways to love and care and respect for each other, we can find ways to be kind, if we can find ways to listen, and if we're in situations because of the fabulous situation we find ourselves in the country right now, if there is no listening, just be kind and maybe just take a walk. Just take a walk. But we can find ways to listen and be there for each other. I am quite sure Wanda has no idea how much she taught me. She thought I was her teacher, of course, which is always the irony of being a minister, right? It's like, are you kidding me? My prayer is that for all of us, that we can continue to authentically be the persons God created us to be, whoever that is. And that we can live and breathe and have our being and find ways to be that light in the world, whatever that means. And it's different for each of us. So when Jesus says to us, what do you want me to do for you? I invite you to pray about that. I invite you to pray about that. Because God truly does love you beyond your wildest imagination. And that love, if you can find ways to live into that, it will change you. You've seen it. And what happens is then it changes other people.